Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Political Appointment, Radio Judaïca in Brussels. My name is Jenny Aharon, and my guest today is Jeremy Saltan, currently on number 16 on the Yamina list, which is headed by Naftali Bennett. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me today. I know this is a hectic period for you. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Jenny. It's a pleasure to be with you.
That's great. So, Jeremy, we are now in a new wave of elections, hopefully not a series of elections, but we are officially back in campaign mode. And this just a year after 3 elections in a row. We have seen many changes since then. I think, the changes we've seen, the demise of blue-white, I think it's polling now under the threshold. New parties emerging, parties that are merging, and parties that are not passing threshold, etc. That's not something new. I think you're used to all of this. But I guess what's really new right now is the fact that we got several candidates running to replace Netanyahu. And that's something that we experience as rather new, because last time it was Benny Gantz. It was a clear competitor to replace Netanyahu. Here we see something else, more or less 3 candidates that are hoping to replace him. So we will need to guess who will run the show after the elections. But I think that Naftali Bennett is quite hopeful to replace Netanyahu. But before we start, just tell us briefly, why do you think Bennett is the right man for this job?
Well, as you said, there are 4 candidates running for prime minister. Israel's used to a head-to-head. This is the first time we're seeing a bunch of heads. I think, though, what puts him aside from the other, contenders for prime minister is he's the only one who's coming with actual experience from outside of the political sphere that is relevant for being able to both combat corona from a health perspective and from an economic one. Of course, he had an amazing military career in Seret Matkal, the Israeli reconnaissance unit, the top of all of the IDF units in terms of the elite units. He became a commander in Maglan, a very much decorated officer, both during his regular service, his career service, and later on during his reserve. And also just a very successful CEO. He was able to make, as we call here, an exit, sell 4 companies, very successful. All of these deals, of course, multi-million dollar deals. But here you go, someone who has the experience, who knows what it is to actually run a business, to pay, the payrolls, to balance budgets, someone who understands the private sector and exactly what is needed in order to be able to have the economy run. The other guys are looking at a guy who is a journalist, and he had a great column, but that's his experience, that he was a journalist before he went into politics. And you have the other guy who was a lawyer, and he was a great lawyer, but that's what he did before he got into politics. And you have Naftali Bennett, who, of course, within his political career has made a very big name for himself. And his last ministerial appointment was, of course, defense minister, where he was able to help Israel get through corona in terms of the first wave, and of course the first lockdown, which was the most well managed out of everything that we've had until now.
He had a real program, real agenda for the corona.
Yes, he did. He as defense minister, he was able to come up with a lot of ideas before the prime minister or even other countries. He was talking about protecting the older population before anyone else was. He was wearing a mask before Netanyahu or anyone else thought that was a good idea to promote. He was talking about rapid testing when everyone else said there was no reason to go ahead and do that. He created the corona hotels to be able to go ahead and isolate people from their surroundings to prevent having a lot of people getting corona as a result of being within a situation of being next to someone who might have it. And of course, he also had the traffic light program. In terms of, instead of locking down the entire country, he realized sometimes you only need to do it for a small area if it's just a city or just a neighborhood. And again, these are the type of things that make a lot of sense. He didn't, just come to that, just because he's a smart guy. It's because he's someone who does his homework. He spent nights staying in the defense ministry overnight, not going home. I can tell you, I remember even a Shabbos that he didn't go home, and he just had all these type of Zoom meetings, meeting with experts from around the globe, understanding better what other countries are doing. Of course, there's over 190 countries around the globe, seeing what's working, what's not. He read a lot of scientific papers. He was able to learn a lot of things before a lot of the people in a lot of the countries, including Europe, were able to understand exactly how to combat the virus. Unfortunately, as you know, Netanyahu left us out of his government, and things really went downhill since Gantz took over the defense ministry. As you mentioned, he went from leading a party of 33 seats to now in the polls not even passing the threshold.
Yes, yeah. So tell me, but in more practical terms right now, how do you see that Bennett has a better chance to form a coalition, meaning coalition partners, compared to Lapid and Sal?
Well, one of the things that's good for Bennett, and I think this makes him unique because there's no one else that's in the situation that he's in, is he's the only one that's not boycotting any of the key members. And he's also the only one who's not being boycotted by any of the key members, right? We have a situation where, of course, Sar and Lapid, they won't sit with Bibi. We heard also Sar saying Saturday night he won't sit with Lapid. Just so that your viewers and listeners understand this, we're in a situation where Lieberman won't sit with the Haredim, who won't sit with Lapid, who won't sit with Smotrich, who won't sit with Meretz, who won't sit with Likud, who won't sit with Labor, who won't sit. You're in a situation where every single party is ruling out sitting with practically anyone else. Bennett is the only one. Only Yamina is in a situation where no one's boycotting us. We're not boycotting anyone. If anyone has a shot to be able to form a coalition, it's for sure us.
Yes, but then the other question arises, because that's when he gets to form a coalition. But why would Bennett be appointed in the first place? Based on what?
So I mean, you were saying you hope we don't have a series of elections. Technically, in order to choose a prime minister, we sort of have three elections, right? The first election is the election for the legislative branch, our Knesset, our parliament. And in that vote, all Israeli citizens are able to vote. The second vote is in the president's residence. That's sort of, our head of state, sort of like our Queen of England.
Yeah, so that's my question right there. Why would Bennett be appointed?
So what happens in that situation is the parties that pass the threshold, they need to decide who it is they're going to support. Now, we've said very clearly we're going to support Bennett regardless of the amount of seats that we have. We know that all of the other prime minister candidates, their parties are doing the same thing. We could be in a situation where no one gets a majority, and then the president is going to have to make a decision who it is that he thinks has the best chance in order to form a government. And we don't know where a lot of these people are going to fall, right? We don't know where's Lieberman's party going to fall. Is he going to endorse us? Is he going to endorse Sar? Is he going to endorse Lapid? We're not sure yet what he's going to do. If blue and white does pass a threshold, who are they going to go ahead and nominate? There are a lot of question marks. And the truth is that really no one knows what a lot of these parties are going to do, because they want to see what the result is of the first election before they deal with the second election in the president's residence. So it's very difficult to skip already the third election, which is what everyone likes to do, and that is the confidence vote in the Knesset of the 120 Knesset members, in which we have a vote of confidence and we form the next government, because we don't know what's going to be in the second phase. So it's very difficult to predict what is going to be in the third phase.
For the moment, we know that Netanyahu has recommendations, meaning from his own party, from the Haredi party, right? The New Hope and the Yamina, they only have their own recommendations of their own MKs for the moment. So, it's easy for Likud also to claim that a vote for Yamina and New Hope means a Lapid government, because Lapid has the most, polls the most out of U3 parties. So it's easy for Likud to claim that a vote for Yamina and Sa'ar would mean support for a Lapid government. How do you answer that?
It's nonsense. Of course, they can claim whatever they want, but it's complete nonsense because let's look at the facts. As you mentioned, if you're looking at the people who are supporting Likud, it is Likud, of course, supporting Netanyahu, along with the Haredi parties of Shas, UTJ. And then it's a question. I don't know if Smotrich's party is going to pass the threshold or not, but assuming that they do, there's just no scenario in which Netanyahu gets 61 MKs. The unique situation of having 4 people running for prime minister is that the other 3 are all very certain that they're not going to nominate Netanyahu when it comes to the president's residence. So Netanyahu does not have 61.
That's fine, but after Netanyahu, we have a situation where Rivlin has to appoint the next candidate, right? Why would he appoint Naftali Bennett or Sa'ar, for that matter, if Lapid has most of votes?
So, just to explain that point, there are 3 mandates. There are 3 tries that you have in order to form a government. Now you're saying in the scenario, and I've heard people talk about this, where it's possible Netanyahu gets the first mandate. And like we said, it's quite clear to everybody, even if he has the most nominations, he has no government and he would fail. And then there's a question of what happens in the second mandate. So there's the question here, and it depends what President Rivlin is going to do. Of course, this also depends because we're going to have an election soon for president, so it might not even be Rivlin. But what is going to happen is the president's going to have to decide. Are we going to go through another phase of nominations? Meaning, is he going to keep the nominations from the first phase in which Netanyahu got the most? Or is he going to then go ahead and say, you know what, let's start from scratch. Maybe Smotrich, who used to be with Bennett, maybe he'll jump over. Maybe the Haredim will realize that Netanyahu didn't manage and they'll choose someone else. These are possibilities. We don't know what the president is going to do. But whatever happens in terms of that second mandate, whether that does go to Naftali Bennett or it goes to somebody else, the assumption that the Likud is making that Bennett would automatically go with Lapid, that's not founded on anything that's ever been said, not by Naftali Bennett or anyone within the Yamina party. But they can claim whatever they want. Like I said, even if it's nonsense, there is this concept of the third mandate. And this is what the legislator decided, because the legislator said, what happens if someone can produce a government, but the president is choosing the wrong people, right? It's very possible the president, like I said, gives it to Netanyahu the first mandate and fails, and he decides to give it to Lapid in the second mandate, and he also fails. So then you have a situation in the third mandate where it's taken away from the president and it's given to the Knesset itself. It's given a Knesset speaker in the Knesset, any MK who's able to produce 61 signatures. And it doesn't matter, it can be from all of the parties or some of the parties. Whoever gets 61 signatures then gets the third mandate, and then they are able to go ahead and hold new coalition negotiations.
At that point, you believe that Bennett can produce that 61 signatures in the Knesset?
Well, when I'm looking at our campaign, I'm looking about the Singapore plan, our new economic plan that we put out. I think we're going to do a lot better. I think in terms of the polls, we've seen that they're not always accurate. I think it's very possible that we're going to be in a great place, and we're not going to need to talk about these scenarios. But if you want to talk about, hypotheticals and scenario and whatever it is, if hypothetically we're talking about the polls as they are now, and of course, historically, the polls, 4 weeks before the election are not the polls before the election, nor are they the election results, then a situation like that, assuming, right, I would think that we would be getting one of the first 2 mandates, but assuming the president gets it wrong and does not give us one of the first 2 mandates, then yeah, I would expect that we would get the third mandate when it went to the Knesset for the final one. And I think, again, no one wants to have a 5th election. Who wants to have a 5th election in 2 years? This is a ridiculous situation. So yeah, I think it's very, very possible that if the president gets it wrong and he gives the mandate twice to people who just do not have a way to form a government, that Bennett will form a government. I go back to the point, we're the only ones that are not boycotting. We're the only ones not being boycotted. When you get to a situation where it's either us or another election, to me, it seems very clear that regardless of the amount of seats that whatever party might have or not have, it comes down to the ability to form a coalition, to get to 61, to be able to have a parliament that shows confidence in a new coalition government. Bennett is in the best position to be able to be the person to do that.
I see. Yeah. What do you think about the report saying that Bennett is the kingmaker for right-wing government?
You know, again, this is going back to the mantra where it's Bibi or Lapid, and I understand that's great for Bibi and Lapid. They can talk about this all that they want. Yes, Bibi, no Bibi. Look,
they could campaign together.
They really are, though. I mean, I'm watching their campaign ads, and it's the same messaging. It's just 180 degrees in terms of who they're blaming each other. But they want to make it look like it's a two-man race. Let's be honest here, though. If you put Likud and Yesh Atid together, the two of those parties together, you don't even get to half of the seats. Okay, a majority of Israelis in every single poll are voting for people other than the two of them. Let's just look at the reality of it. And that is that as much as Netanyahu and Lapid would love for this election to be about both of them, this election is about something completely different. It's about who is going to be able to take Israel out of the chaos that was caused by this current leadership and bring new leadership to the state of Israel and bring 400,000 new jobs to Israelis and deal with the fact of this, 17, 18% unemployment, deal with a new economic plan, clean Corona up from Israel with an actual plan, actually be on the initiative as opposed to being reactive. There is no government plan, by the way, long term. How's Israel supposed to look a month from now? They're just always trying to figure out how Israel looks a week from now. There are Aliyah flights that might get canceled. People might not be able to make Aliyah because they just, they don't know if the airport's going to be open or not.
But at the end, I know all of that, but in the end, it comes down to who gets the 61. I also see two possibilities for Naftali Bennett myself. I see, of course, Naftali Bennett being the kingmaker for right-wing government under Netanyahu, but I also see him maybe potentially prime minister on the other side because he holds the key to the right-wing government, meaning he can set that as a condition. Is that something that is possible to negotiate on the other side?
Well, the only thing that we're negotiating right now is we're negotiating for the vote of the Israeli voter. And what we're trying to do is explain that we have the best economic plan to get out of Corona, the best health plan to get out of Corona, and that it's very clear based on what we've gone through the last 6 months, that this Netanyahu-Gantz government has been a colossal failure. The situation where we're one of the only countries that did not have mandatory testing before you flew in from an airport is just a ridiculous thing. I just think people are not talking about right and left. They're talking about the fact that they don't have a job, that they're stuck at home.
Yeah,
they're wondering if they're safe.
Just to continue on this point, because Bennett did declare at some point that he was going to put the ideological part of his program aside to save the country, right, from Corona, from the economic pressure on the citizens, meaning, in other terms, annexation, expanding settlements, all of that. He would put those aside to save the country. But I mean, in practice, how would Bennett, for example, react then to Biden's pressure in the meantime? Because it's not something that you can really put aside now between us.
No, I'm not saying that you can put pressure aside, but in terms of the situation we had 3 elections on the right-left divide, and they've all been inconclusive. No one's been able to go ahead and form a government. So whatever I say to these people, and they don't seem to believe me, there is no ability to create a majority in the parliament to be able to push through the type of things that we believe in. So I'm saying, put aside the fact that I believe the priority should be to deal with COVID from a health and economic perspective. Let's talk about practically. You don't have the votes to go ahead and do these things. Why should we lie to our voters and make them all these promises when we know that there's most likely no capability for us to be able to move forward on these issues? And like I said, I do think people care a lot more about being able to finish the month and paid their bills. And that's why the economy, and of course being safe health-wise in terms of COVID, is the number one, concern for them above all these issues. I'm happy to fight about these issues. You know me well, Jenny. I believe about these issues very much. They're very much within my values. We just can't make movement on them. And there are certain things that do take precedence that need to have the priority now. In terms of the Biden administration, we also have to realize they're dealing with their own domestic situation right now. They've lost more people to COVID than WW1, WW2, and Vietnam combined. Okay, this is not an easy time in the U.S. Of course, I come from the U.S. That's where I was born. That's where I grew up. I have a lot of family there. I have a lot of friends. I try to get there as often as I can. It is not easy right now in the States, and the vaccine rollout has been. The vaccine rollout is just terrible right now in the States. Let's be honest. Biden talked about the fact that it would be great under him. It's not.
So what you're saying is that the Biden administration is also going to
us.
Yeah, but so Biden, what you're saying is Biden is going also to be focused on his own domestic problem, on his own vaccine issues and COVID issues, right? So you are hoping actually that Biden would not be focused on any of these issues either, and leave that subject aside. But I don't know if it works that way, right?
No, it's not about hoping that he's going to do that. I'm looking at the fact that he's been in office for now 5 weeks, and that's what his priority has been. His priority has not been dealing with the Middle East. In fact, it took him over a month to start talking about what he was even going to do with the Middle East. I think it was only yesterday or today that Secretary of State Blinken came up with the official policy that, by the way, the Americans are back to supporting a two-state solution. If this was so important to him, Obama on the first day of office made these phone calls, to Abbas and to Olmert, since it was before Netanyahu. Likewise with W. Bush, it was one of the first things that he did. The Middle East is not a big priority. I know this is hard for people in Europe to understand, but the European theater isn't as important to America right now. Right now, the Chinese conflict, which has really gone to a level of a Cold War in terms of what's happening with the allies of both sides on the region. The Pacific Ocean is now a lot more interesting to the United States foreign policy than the Atlantic Ocean is. And when it comes to the Middle East, Biden and especially the Democrat Party, they're so sick of everything from Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Libya. It's just not a big priority. It's true that the one exception is Iran. That is the one exception. And I'll tell you, we already have what I would say better dialogue right now with the Biden administration than we did back during the Obama administration, because it is different. People who were afraid we were going to go back to Obama, this isn't Obama. Yeah. It's just not. Biden is different. Biden is not Trump, but he's not Obama. And the one issue we will be dealing with is going to be Iran. I don't think we're going to be talking about the Palestinian question. I just don't think, frankly, that is something that's on the top of the agenda. I do think one of the things they would like to do is to continue on the Abraham Accords. I heard one administration official tell me, he looked at the number, of the four countries that signed, agreements with Israel of the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. So obviously Biden wants to do at least 5, so he can, go ahead and surpass Trump on that. And that's fine. That stuff is good. I see a lot of positive things that we can do with the Biden administration also.
Yeah,
There'll
I
be
think so too.
Agreements about Iran, but in terms of pressure, look, Israel is their own independent state. If we have a national security issue, and we, the Americans are our best friends, but if we have a national security issue and we have to act on it alone, we'll do so, with or without our allies, because we need to take care of our national interest. That's, the same way that every other country, no different, all of you guys in Europe, every single country does what makes sense based on their national interest. That's just the reality of it. You try to go ahead and act based on norms and within allies and dialogue and whatever it is. But what it comes down to is we're not going to let Iran get the bomb. If we take you guys at your word, Europe also does not want Iran to get the bomb. So I don't think we have any difference of opinion here. Yeah. Unless, of course, Like I said, by accident, someone really does want Iran to get the bomb. But
no
I'll take
one wants Iran to get the bomb. No one wants Iran to get the bomb, but everyone disagrees on how to prevent Iran to get the bomb. And sometimes these are completely opposite views. So that's how we get into trouble.
Look,
you know, between.
It's fine. It's fine to have arguments like that. And believe me, there are a lot of arguments like that happening behind closed doors. The fact that most of them are happening behind closed doors and a lot of it is not on the front papers, again, shows you that once again, the Biden administration is not Obama. It's not Trump, but it's not Obama. Yeah. So I'm not worried so much about pressure. I realize the main issues in where there will be public, spats, that is going to be on Iran. But like I said, we're just going to make sure they don't get the bomb. I know that everyone says that's their objective as well. We'll disagree about what tactic, what strategy, but as long as we have the same objective, I'm confident that we'll be able to get through that. I can tell you there are quite a few people in the Israeli administration that had a lot of question marks in terms of things that happened, along the previous timeline. If there were perhaps certain officials in certain governments that really did want to see Iran get the bomb. I don't have that feeling when I'm talking to anyone today, at least myself, right? I don't have that feeling when I'm talking about to anyone in Europe or America. I think, again, like you said, the idea is what do you do in order to achieve that goal?
Exactly.
For us, sunset clauses is something that
but sunset clause is a big issue. Is a big issue, and I don't think it's so easy to negotiate it. But just to go to Europe, because we are talking about Europe right now.
Yes.
We have seen Bennett also defending Israel quite fiercely on BBC and other channels, which he does very well. So how will Bennett handle difficult partners like the European Union that constantly pressures Israel in terms of settlements and in terms of building, constructions of their own in Area C without Israel's consent? It's also problematic because then they end up condemning Israel when Israel is demolishing the constructions, while they are the ones actually violating agreements. So how will he handle this pressure? Because in the end of the day, the European Union is Israel's partner. It is still Israel's largest export market. And I think it's an important partner. It's still an important partner. So how will Bennett handle that, according to you?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Europe, for sure, besides being our number one trade partner, we have a lot of positive relationships and we exchange a lot of ideas, and we have a lot of official agreements. We have some unofficial agreements. But yeah, in terms of research, development, science, technology, agriculture, of course, now with the new energy pipelines, it's very difficult to separate Israel from Europe. There are disagreements when it comes to certain things in national security and diplomatic policy. That's not new. I would say, though, people who want to make it seem like every day Israel and the EU are fighting, I would disagree with that. I would say that a majority of the conversations and dialogue are very positive. The areas in which, of course, there are disagreements are all in that area when it comes to defense and foreign affairs. And that's the stuff that does go and get into the news. But there are plenty of things that we do agree with. And there are plenty of member nations, I should say, within the EU that definitely see eye to eye with us on a lot of issues. Even if within EU statements, they'll agree to certain wording. Israel is always about looking at the actions and the situation on the ground. That's what we care about so much more than whatever wording is used in whatever diplomatic document. And I can tell you, I don't think it's a surprise for you to hear this, is someone who I know you're very much involved yourself within a lot of diplomatic circles. I've been told many times, even before something came out, something's going to come out, but we don't really mean it. So don't take it, don't take it at face value. So you do have situations where, because of political reasons, the EU needs to say certain things. And we know exactly when the EU means something and when the EU might not mean something. That's fine. And I'm not going in and saying there aren't disagreements. There are disagreements. When it comes to the Palestinian issue, we have disagreements. When it comes to Iran, we have disagreements. but there are plenty of areas where we do have agreements on, right?
Yes, right. Of course, it all depends from which angle we are looking at this. But you know, the European Union still refuses to have high diplomatic talks with Israel. Often engages in megaphone diplomacy. That's something that Israel and the European Union needs to work on. But I guess that we will see on the long run. But
Jenny,
yes, Jeremy, I just have a last question for you. So just briefly then.
Sure, I'll just say briefly. I know quite a few members of the European Parliament. I know quite a few people within the various institutions of the European Union. I have very good relationships there. I am not worried in terms of what's going to happen moving forward because we have the relationships in place, especially if Bennett is prime minister, and especially with me in the next Knesset, within the circles that are needed, we will be able to have dialogue and come, what I believe to, are more agreements than we've seen in previous years under the Likud administration. Okay,
Jeremy, so just my last question to you, and that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. Your term in the Knesset, hopefully, at next elections, you are running for Knesset. As you said before, you are an American-born, made Aliyah when you were a teenager, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was a week before the 6th grade.
Okay, nice. So tell me what newcomers, Olim, can expect from you, your term in the Knesset.
For sure. What I want to do is I want to spend my term really acting as an address to all immigrants that came from all English-speaking nations. I can tell I have a lot of supporters also of other European nations that they happen to speak English and they want to have an address of someone who, again, who understands them, who grew up the way that they do, share the same values that they do. And I want to work on these issues of absorption, dealing with the accreditation and the transferring of various educational degrees or professional licensing. There's a lot of work that we can do for all immigrants. There are a lot of stuff we can do specifically for Anglos. I would also like to encourage Aliyah. I know that that's something that is sensitive to certain people. I don't think we should be afraid to do that. I also believe that we need to repair. We need to be able to have a cultivating and strengthening of ties within the diaspora Jewish community. That starts with having conversations like this. And I think it's very important to go ahead and work on this. Of course, Bennett was the diaspora minister from 2013 to 2019, and this is something that's very much important to him as well, not just to me. And I also think in terms of Hasbara, we need to not be shy, but also be able to explain in a way that's very logical and rational, also frank, but be able to go ahead and have conversations with our counterparts within foreign affairs so that we're able to improve Israel's standing around the globe. And that means doing Hasbara type activities in the media, which is something I plan on doing, but also a lot of stuff behind the door, behind the scenes.
Yes.
And again, I think a lot of people within various circles, they know me, they know my work. It speaks for itself. And you need to have also those type of discrete channels. And it's really, really important that we're able to do that. So again, immigration, absorption, diaspora affairs, Hasbara, foreign relations.
I think also that Hasbara is going to be very much the core of a Bennett-led government, because we see how Bennett is so keen always to defend Israel's interests abroad. So I'm sure that that's also going to be on top priorities on his list.
I would say also we have a French candidate running, we have a Russian candidate running. We're going to be doing this on a global level for sure in the next Knesset.
Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm going to thank all Judaïca listeners. Thank you for being with us, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you for everyone who listened.